Welcome to GESARA for Dummies. Let's look at today's news from Professor William Liebenberg, prepared by Martin Stein. Please like, share and subscribe. Join our Telegram group in the comments below. Thank you. Let's go. The GESARA Law. Starlink Minis are now installed on taxis in Zimbabwe. Starlink is crucial for things like this, in rural areas in Zimbabwe. Let's watch. Starlink will be the heartbeat to every financial system, once the earthbound internet collapses. It is just a matter of time, before Project Odin is called. The amount of satellites roaming the Earth is simply astounding. Timeline of the world's satellites. Brics GCR Nations Alliance. The changing role of the U.S. dollar. Amid rising geopolitical fragmentation, conflicts over international trade and finance, and populist backlash against globalization in many Western democracies, there is talk that the fiat dollar's status is at risk. Governments and central banks around the world hold fiat dollar-dominated assets, usually U.S. Treasury debt, as reserves to manage the foreign exchange value of their currencies. Fiat dollar assets comprise about 59% of global foreign currency reserves. The dollar's share of global reserves has fallen from more than 70% in 2000 to 59% today. Now pay attention. Asia accelerates de-dollarization efforts. Southeast Asian nations are advancing plans to reduce their dependence on the US dollar, as part of an ASEAN initiative, the Association of Countries South of China. This goal has been included in the recently published ASEAN Economic Community Strategic Plan for 2026 to 2030. Special attention is being given to increasing the use of local currencies in cross-border trade and investment, aiming to minimize risks associated with dollar volatility and reduce transaction costs. The dollar's recent 9% drop against major currencies signals a deepening shift toward de-dollarization, driven by Brics coordination, local currency initiatives, and rising hedging costs. The dollar's shrinking share in global forex reserves underscores a systemic reconfiguration, with markets increasingly favoring alternative monetary strategies. Taiwanese life insurance firms, managing over $700 billion in foreign investments, are divesting dollar-based assets, due to hedging costs soaring into double digits, rendering USD holdings uneconomical. This move reflects a broader structural shift in Asia, where the burden of dollar debt has diminished, replaced by the risks of overexposure to dollar assets. The trend aligns with the Brics nations' push for trade settlement in local currencies, signaling growing confidence in monetary independence. As Asian financial systems reduce reliance on the dollar, the de-dollarization movement is gaining momentum, challenging the USD's status as the default global reserve currency. This transition suggests a future where regional currencies play a larger role in international finance, reshaping global economic frameworks. Then Japan. Japan's finance minister says the country will promote more domestic ownership of Japanese government bonds. Bye-bye, U.S. bonds. 3 signs of the end of the U.S. fiat dollar. Let's swatch.
The exorbitant privilege of the dollar will come to an end for 3 fundamental reasons, and we're watching it right now. One is simply the weight of the U.S. in the world. That share is declining when measured in purchasing power in a significant way, and it will continue to do so. Second, the U.S. completely abused the privilege of being the world's key currency. All of the weaponization of the dollar. And part of it is simply grabbing Russia's foreign exchange reserves, for example. It's a bad act. When countries watch this long enough, it tells you, don't keep your money in dollars. The U.S. used the dollar for enforcement of sanctions. They threatened third countries. If you don't go along with our sanctions, we cut your banks out of the SWIFT system. And the third point that I think is absolutely also true, SWIFT is a primitive clearing system at this point. And so in a digital age, just the sheer technology of clearing doesn't have to go through commercial banks the way it did. It will, in some fundamental sense, be a central bank digital currency. The Fed isn't doing anything interesting on digital currencies either, whereas the People's Bank of China absolutely is. In Washington, they're playing games with crypto rather than digital central bank currency. So they're even undermining the dollar by turning to crypto because that's the game of the campaign financiers.
BRICS alliance goes full de-dollarization. The global shift away from the USD is no longer theory, it's happening. BRICS nations are rolling out new cross-border payment pilots, and guess what's being mentioned as the bridge? XRP. This isn't just bullish. It's the beginning of a new global monetary system. Dubai, UAE, Russia, and many BRICS countries are already aligned with XRP. Next on BRICS' agenda is Operation Sandman, and this is to break the cabal's fiat dollar. The question is, how quick can BRICS bring their cross-border payment system online, a very unique system, operating with a single trade unit currency, bridging multiple sovereign currencies. Guess we'll have to wait for the BRICS summit, on 6 to 7 July, more importantly, the signing of the cryptocurrencies regulations into U.S. law, and July, which is the bedrock for the world. Japan flips the switch with XRP. Let's swatch.
I think crypto's biggest story is happening in America. While everyone's been distracted by SEC headlines, something way bigger has been going down in Japan. Most people miss that 80% of Japanese banks are signing on to start using XRP. Japan isn't just any market. We're talking about the world's 3rd largest economy where people still use cash for almost everything. Imagine turning out all those paper bills into digital money. That's $4 trillion in transactions just waiting to go digital. And Ripple didn't stumble onto this by accident. While most people were obsessed with fluff on social media, they were building real relationships with real banks. And here's the wild part. This is really just the beginning. When one major economy figures out digital payments, others are going to follow. Fast. Think about how quickly everyone copied China's mobile payment boom. Remember that $7 billion in daily volume that everyone talks about? That's nothing compared to what's coming when entire nations flip the switch on digital currency. The real price action comes into play when you understand that utility assets are rebuilding the pipes that move money. And think about that the next time someone tells you that crypto is just speculation. The biggest moves happen when you're not looking.
Payment systems. Ripple CEO, Brad Garlinghouse, XRP is the only digital asset poised to solve a problem at scale, a global payments problem. Let's swatch.
Payment flow that might be going from dollar to Mexican peso, and you're holding a dollar, you're selling that dollar and buying XRP, you're moving that XRP across the XRP ledger to, let's say, Bitso, who's here in the audience today. You're selling the XRP and you're buying Mexican peso. By enabling that liquidity to move from dollar to peso in real time, you're changing how that oil is greasing the engine of correspondent banking. So for us, in a world of hype, in a world of experimentation, in a world where people talk about the opportunity and really the speculation of digital assets, we feel like XRP is the only digital asset really poised to solve a problem at scale, a global payments problem.
XRP is more than just another cryptocurrency, it's a purpose-built digital asset, designed for efficient global value transfer. With its high speed, low cost, and scalability, it holds promise for transforming how money moves across borders. XRP utility narrative keeps getting clearer. No other cryptocurrency is designed for the banks to use at scale, meaning The XRP ledger is reportedly scalable up to 1,500 transactions per second. XRP's scale refers to its ability to handle a high volume of transactions quickly and efficiently. Also, as we approach July 1, 2025, please be aware that this day is a crossover date into the new financial system under Basel III compliance. June and July are transitional months for us, depending on which side of a trade you find yourself. By the end of July, things are going to look much different. Senator Bill Hagerty says, crypto stablecoin legislation is going to propel America's payment system into the 21st century. Let's watch.
We have broad agreement, Kaylee, with respect to the content of this stablecoin legislation, My Genius Act. And this is going to, I think, take us into the 21st century in terms of upgrading our payment systems. It's going to have very desirable effects, taking the U.S. economy into the digital assets arena, keeping innovation here, lowering risk here in America, and putting in place guardrails that will protect consumers, because every one of these stablecoins will be backed up dollar for dollar with U.S. Treasuries. Very positive outcome here. We've got very strong support.
At Bitcoin 2025, in Las Vegas, stablecoins, not Bitcoin, took center stage, reflecting a shift in focus toward dollar-pegged digital tokens. Vice President J.D. Vance described stablecoins as a force multiplier for U.S. economic power, emphasizing that they do not threaten the dollar, but enhance its global dominance. He strongly endorsed the Genius Act, a bipartisan Senate bill, which aims to create a regulatory framework for stablecoins. Vance argued that the legislation would expand stablecoin use as a digital payment system for millions of Americans, and urged the crypto community to maintain political activism to ensure its passage. The Genius Act's framework would allow banks to issue their own stablecoins, and non-bank entities to do so with registration and regulatory compliance, marking a significant shift from past restrictions. Tether CEO, Paolo Ardino, emphasized stablecoins' potential to serve the unbanked, stating that half the world's population, whom he argued should not be considered a niche, lacks access to traditional banking. He positioned Tether, the largest stablecoin issuer, as a key player in reaching these underserved communities. The event highlighted growing political and financial momentum behind stablecoins, with the Genius Act seen as a potential watershed for integrating crypto into mainstream markets. XRP's sheer scalability sets them apart from the rest of cryptocurrencies. Let's watch.
As you know, sending money to people across country lines is surprisingly, crazily difficult. It just seems like this thing is so broken, like someone needs to build a stable coin, and the thing that needs to exist is basically needs to have a certain amount of scale in order to become a state.
By 2030, it's expected to reach 300 trillion.
We feel like XRP is the only digital asset really poised to solve a problem at scale, a global payments problem.
Improve it with more scalable blockchain technologies like Brad's company provides.
This basically needs to have a certain amount of scale in order to become a state.
The world's got trillions and trillions of dollars tied up in liquidity just to get around how clunky the movement of value is around the world.
We feel like XRP is the only digital asset really poised to solve a problem at scale.
XRP's leaders tells you the truth. Let's watch.
As you know, sending money to people across country lines is surprisingly, crazily difficult. It just seems like this thing is so broken, like someone needs to build a stable coin, and the thing that needs to exist is basically needs to have a certain amount of scale in order to become a state.
By 2030, it's expected to reach 300 trillion.
We feel like XRP is the only digital asset really poised to solve a problem at scale, a global payments problem.
Improve it with more scalable blockchain technologies like Brad's company provides.
This basically needs to have a certain amount of scale in order to become a state.
The world's got trillions and trillions of dollars tied up in liquidity just to get around how clunky the movement of value is around the world.
We feel like XRP is the only digital asset really poised to solve a problem at scale.
Commodities. The U.S. Treasury could reprice gold, tokenized debt with RLUSD, and peg it to gold, solving the debt crisis in one move. XRP would bridge it all. This isn't a theory. That's your reset. You'll see the headlines in the future. Mark my words. Let's watch.
Whether they kick the can down the road or whether we do have a debt default, we end up going back to gold. That's just how it is. If the US Treasury right now can take the debt and they could tokenize it and peg it to gold and have a reevaluation, they can stabilize the currency and maintain the liquidity that is needed to finance the government and emerging economies. And also, President Trump does hold the executive authority that could facilitate such a move, similar to what happened in 1933, which essentially did reset America's monetary system. So this could happen again. What do you think?
I think it's underspoken of, and it's very real risk. This is the interesting thing. Most people, you have the bell curve. Most people live in the fat of the belly. And when you're in extreme times, you should be expecting extreme events.
Remember H.R. 9157, the Gold Standard Restoration Act, introduced in 2024, it's coming. The Genius Act and Market Structure Bill not only need to pass, but also require implementation, which may take some time. When the rules of the road are clear, they'll make the headlines. Basel III July 1st, buckle up. XRP, 2025 to 2045, will blow your mind. When XRP flip, it is not going to be gradual, it is going to be instant and violent. Let's watch.
Most people still have no idea what's coming for XRP. While they chase hype coins, Ripple's been silently building the new financial backbone for over a decade, partnering with banks, central banks, payment networks, and preparing the rails for a global liquidity reset. The infrastructure is already done. The switch is ready. And when tokenized assets like real estate, stocks, commodities, CBDCs start flooding into this system, XRP won't just be another crypto. It'll be the bridge that moves quadrillions. If Ripple succeeds the way that it's heading, XRP isn't going to top out at $5 or $10. No. We're talking $500,000 to $2 million or XRP over the next 20 years because the math demands it. A tiny supply, trillions needed to move instantly, constant tokens burning, and a global system standardized on ISO 20022. You're not buying a coin. You're front-running the biggest financial reset in human history. And 99% of the people are still laughing. Let them laugh. Remember this. When it flips, it's going to be violent. There won't be time to get positioned later. You're either set up before the liquidity floodgates open, or you're watching it happen from the freaking sidelines. XRP's not a trade. XRP is the rails. Stay patient. Stay focused. And when the world wakes up, you'll already be sitting at the table. This isn't financial advice. This is a fucking warning.
Why are ISO 20022 compliant coins prices going nowhere currently? Because they are the infrastructure, and they will go instantly and violently. Let's watch.
Why are ISO 20022 compliant assets being quietly accumulated while the price goes nowhere? Because this isn't just a market, it's a setup. XRP, XLM, Quant, HBAR, XDC, IOTA, Algo, these aren't hype coins. They're the infrastructure. They're built for cross-border payments, CBDCs, tokenized assets, and machine-to-machine settlements. They're the rails of the next financial system. So ask yourself, why would the price of something that is so powerful stay so low for so long? Because they're suppressing it on purpose. Let's break it down. Regulatory uncertainty, manufactured fear. They dragged XRP through the courts for years, while secretly partnering with central banks behind the scenes. Fear keeps retail out and lets institutions walk quietly in. Media control. Major outlets won't touch ISO cryptos unless it's to say XRP is a scam, but they'll push hype project, meme coins, and distractions. Why? Because attention is power, and they want yours anywhere but here. Liquidity control. XRP got delisted during its lawsuit, XTC barely trades on major exchanges. They don't want it to be accessible until they're done accumulating. Whale games and algorithmic suppression. Massive sell walls are programmed to stop breakout moves. Bots trigger stop losses and fake out pumps to keep retail shaky. It's not a broken market, it's a controlled environment. OTC, over-the-counter drainage. Institutions aren't buying on Coinbase. They're making massive purchases behind closed doors off exchange, which means supply disappears, but the price doesn't move. That's not just quiet accumulation, that's precision extraction. So why all the secrecy? Because once ISO 20022 is fully activated, once CBDCs are live, once real settlement volume flows through these rails, the volume of these tokens won't raise slowly. They will reprice instantly. This is not a pump. This is a system reset. And what happens, and when it happens, people who saw through the silence will already be holding the keys to the new grid. Open your eyes.
Show us some love by liking our videos, and leave us a short comment on your thoughts. Thank you.